lady at the back, second row from the front, and then the gentleman in the front.
Okay. Just wondering about the religion question. Why should the Constitution say that Sharia law will be primary, the only source of law? My problem is that with religion and with Islam, there are so many different interpretations of every single provision. How can you safeguard, say, in the future, be the religious leaders who will then maybe radicalize their interpretations and apply that to the country? And the question of women's rights troubles me very much. Yes, our society is quite conservative, and there are problems socially in how women are being treated by their brothers, husbands, fathers, whatever, and they need to ensure that they are protected. So this is my issue, not just with women's rights and the interpretation of Sharia, but how are we going to know that, the religious interpreters are not going to become more and more extremist and then have a bigger hold on the whole country?
Thank you. Ms. Al-Wafi, I wonder if you have any.
I was worried you were going to start with me. I mean, I think this is a very complicated question, and I think I tried to comment on that briefly as well, to say that I also have concerns if the Constitution will be drafted to say that the Sharia is a primary source. I, at most, would be comfortable with saying that it is a source and agree with you. Then, the interpretation and the mechanisms and that then goes into the institutions that are supported to enforce rights and protect people's rights, such as the judiciary, and the training that that the judges that get appointed to the judiciary, to the courts, have in their being trained in civil law and in the Sharia, and how they will apply their interpretations. And so it's very complicated, and I won't profess to know all the answers to that, but I also have concerns, and I hope that the Constitution isn't pinned on the Sharia only. I also invite panelists to.
I think Ms. Saudi.
Yeah, I think it's always a Molotov cocktail to mix religion, Libyan men, and women's rights, but I'll give it a go. I think which is the point I made when I first started, you're not drafting for the good guys when you're doing a constitution. You're drafting for the guys that want to abuse their power. If governed by their nature were good guys, then constitutions would have never come about. The point of a constitution is to enshrine and guarantee your rights. So we need to keep in mind that when we're drafting, we're not drafting for the people on this panel's interpretation of Sharia. We're drafting for the interpretation of people who probably wouldn't come to this panel because they're women sitting in mixed audience. And so I think what we need to keep in mind is that, and how do you manage that? Now, because you say you don't want Sharia, it doesn't make you not Muslim. So, we need to get over this fear of saying, unless it's Islamic, then it's not Muslim. I mean, Libya will inevitably always be a Muslim country. Whether it's an Islamic state is what we're debating here. And I think people need to stop getting emotional about the two concepts. Stepping back, looking at how we then implement this Muslim character into the Constitution. There are many ways you can implement your character on a Constitution without jeopardizing people's rights. You can say that, we are a Muslim country. We are a country of many faiths. The predominant one is Muslim. Sharia will be a source of law, but the Constitution remains the supreme source of law. So if there's a conflict between a fundamental right and a Sharia interpretation, which can be any man, and one of the things our religion gives us is the blessing between the difference of opinion in Islamic scholars. And so why enshrine a specific Islamic scholar when our faith gives us the ability, effectively, to go and ask as many scholars as you want to pick the position you think is most suitable? And so I don't understand this concept of taking the beauty of our faith and limiting it. Going specifically to the women's point, and the point of I use the elections as a very simple example because everyone says women should vote. Women should vote. We organized several trainings and several events. Women don't show up because of mahram. We don't have a man to escort us to this venue. It's something in our culture. People interpret mahram very strictly. If you have a situation where your elections laws are subject to Sharia, you can get a situation where a woman cannot physically get to voting. So it's not necessarily the spirit of our faith or that our faith prohibits women from taking part in politics. It's the procedural blocks that people can put to a woman using her right, and that's the point. No one is questioning Islam's protection of women, full stop. What we're doing is man's interpretation of it and the blocks he can put to hinder anyone's use of their civil and political rights. You have Gaddafi quoting that you shouldn't, in Islam, you have to follow your leader. This is who you're catering for people who are going to use Islam abusively. And so I think we just need to just genuinely detach from the fact that by saying something about an Islamic state, it does not make us non-Muslims, and just step away.
Thank you very much. Mr. El-Gamati.
Yeah,
briefly.
very briefly. First of all, Ilham, I don't know where you get the idea from that. For a woman to go and vote, she needs a mahram. It's like a woman having to go to the city center to do shopping. She doesn't need a mahram for that. I think the concept of mahram is very specific, and you can get to scholars who will explain to you it's to do with traveling thousands of miles away.
Which scholar do you go to?
No, that's easily sorted out. I refer to the lady who said Sharia is the only source. Actually, no one I know who states or asks. There might be very, very few in Libya who ask that Sharia is the only source. That cannot be right. That's not logical. Because I'll give you an example. For example, commercial law. What has commercial law got to do with Sharia? A law that stipulates how we award contracts for exploration of mines and oil and gas. What's that got to do with Sharia? So nobody's saying Sharia is the only source of legislation. People are saying Sharia is one of the sources or the main source, but they can still go to other sources. And also, the reason why they're saying Sharia is the main source, because there are things, if they contradict Islam, the people of Libya will not accept them. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a couple of examples. I'm aware of the secular argument about Sharia and why they refuse Sharia. But look, France has a law banning religious symbols. Britain does not go along with that law. Each society has its own unique values and customs and principles and culture and religion. Libya is a Muslim society, deeply conservative. Libyans will not accept a law that allows having children outside marriage or legalizing homosexuality. In liberal democracies, secular democracies, perfectly guaranteed and protected. So that's what I mean when I say Libyans will not accept law that contradict Sharia. Only come from Sharia. No, nobody is saying that Sharia is the only source, saying that the main source and that laws should be consistent with our values, Islamic values, but there can be other sources if needed be, and also it's all a matter of interpretation. And I think Libyan society, being a moderate, open-minded society, they don't have I give you an example. Women in Saudi Arabia are not allowed to vote and are not allowed to drive cars. That's got nothing to do with Sharia or Islam. In Libya, in 1964, there has been a law giving women the right to vote. Okay, so Libya is different. So each country has to look at its own culture, its own specificity, and draw its laws and legislations and constitutions based on that. When we should not borrow a Scandinavian model or a Singapore model or whatever and apply it to Libya. Neither do we expect the other countries to copy Libyan culture and Libyan specificity.
Thank you.